Yes guys, welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix YouTube video. My name is FPL Nacho, and in this video we are going to be looking ahead to the provisional double game week 22, where both Man United and Leeds potentially will have doubles. So in this video we are going to be in particular focusing on those hot topics like Bruno Fernandes, the best Leeds assets to target, and two wildcard drafts that I really think are going to help you guys moving forward. So if you are new around here, make sure you do hit that subscribe button. It'd be awesome to have you guys on the journey. And if you enjoy the content you are seeing, it'd be great if you could drop a like on the video. So guys, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so first up, something that I know a lot of you guys are considering ahead of game week 22 is the potential transfer of Bruno Fernandes into your team. Now, a quick reminder why a lot of managers out there are considering Bruno Fernandes for their teams. And that is mainly because of the potential double game week 22 that Man United will have at home against Crystal Palace and at home against Leeds. Now, before you consider making any of your free transfers, I really want to urge caution and patience on your transfers. Man United are going to be playing in the first and second leg of the EFL Cup and an FA Cup fixture. And that FA Cup fixture will determine whether Man United and Leeds have their double game week. But if they are to avoid a replay for both Man United and Leeds, I really do think that a triple up in Man United assets is the way going forward. And Bruno Fernandes seems to be the direction that a lot of the FPL community are going for. Now, on your screens here, you can see a comparison between Bruno Fernandes and Kevin De Bruyne between game week 17 and game week 21. Now, the reason I've picked that time frame is because it is post-World Cup, and I really do think it is kind of a valid data and sample size for us to consider now, particularly with Man City and the way that they've started since the World Cup. They haven't really hit the ground running, and I don't really want to be considering the data before the World Cup. And for Bruno Fernandes, this is the period where Cristiano Ronaldo has left the team, and I really do think that in particular is valid when we are looking at Bruno Fernandes as an option going forward. Now, as you can see, we've highlighted in green the department where the player is winning in. So for expected goals, you can see Bruno leads Kevin De Bruyne 0.17 expected goals per 90 to Kevin De Bruyne's 0.08. And whereas Kevin De Bruyne historically has always been the man in expected goals per 90, it's actually Bruno Fernandes in the last few game weeks that has actually outscored Kevin De Bruyne at 0.56 to 0.49. Now, I think the common theme right now for Bruno Fernandes and Kevin De Bruyne this season has been very much a case of not necessarily being in goal-scoring form, but being the chance creators in their particular teams. Kevin De Bruyne, we know, years gone by, has always been the man with the assists in their team, and of course picking up goals along the way. But really with Bruno Fernandes, I look back and think to myself, he has always been the goal scorer in this Man United team. Obviously, having penalties in that season prior was a big factor towards that. But for this season, he has been very much the heartbeat of the team and the creator of goals. And you can see that in the data that we are looking at here. Now, when we are looking at FPL options going forward, naturally, I always want to be considering the player that is scoring the goals for their team. So naturally, Mahrez at a cheaper price at Man City and Rashford at a cheaper price at Man United have been the more attractive assets for managers and arguably the more value picks. But for those managers that are sat there right now with Kevin De Bruyne in their teams, looking at the underlying stats of Bruno Fernandes and the projected points for game week 22 being nearly double of what Kevin De Bruyne's is, I really do think making the move from Kevin De Bruyne to Bruno Fernandes for game week 22 is a worthwhile move for your teams. Now, if that was to be for a negative 4-point hit, that's where I start to question the value of the move. And I'm going to discuss that in a minute. But looking at the projected points, with those two favourable home games, we need to remember with Bruno Fernandes that his expected minutes are one of the best for any midfielder option. It seems that he never gets injured and he always gets played as he's such a vital part in that Man United team. With Kevin De Bruyne, on the other hand, we saw him get rotated in the fixture that they had away against Tottenham. And we don't know necessarily whether that tactical tweak is going to be deployed again by Pep Guardiola in game week 22 when they have Spurs again. Now, the reason why I said maybe not to consider a -4 from Kevin De Bruyne to Bruno Fernandes is I really do think that potentially going back to Kevin De Bruyne in 23 for their double game week is a viable transfer for your teams. That said, for a situation here, I do think that a viable move for you to make would be Kevin De Bruyne to Bruno Fernandes for game week 22. And then, once we have had game week 22 out of the way, we might get a better understanding whether Kevin De Bruyne can be completely avoided himself. When we look at the expected goals per 90, they really are not promising at all. And when we have someone like Mahrez who's getting guaranteed game time as we speak, and his expected goals is far more superior than Kevin De Bruyne's, being about 5 million cheaper, I would question whether maybe actually going from Bruno Fernandes to Mahrez to the double and freeing up 4 or 5 million in the bank is the way to go forward. And because of that kind of thought process there, I think Kevin De Bruyne to Bruno Fernandes in game week 22 is a fantastic move for your teams, and it gives you one more game week to understand which Man City midfielder to move towards. Then when we reach the double, then we can decide whether to go for the cheaper option in Mahrez or go back to the premium in Kevin De Bruyne. And you can see over the next 4 predicted points, even though Bruno Fernandes has that fantastic double in 22, it is still Kevin De Bruyne that comes out on top. But remember, he is more expensive than Bruno Fernandes. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. We're really interested to know what your transfer strategy is regarding Bruno Fernandes. But again, I urge patience. Do not be pulling the trigger early on Man United, as if either team have a cup replay, then that means their double may not happen. Now, we're going to move on to another team that may potentially have a double game week, with one of those fixtures being against Man United. And that's going to be 2 Leeds assets that I really think should be in our considerations for game week 22. Now, those 2 players are going to be Gnonto, a 5 million forward at Leeds, and of course, Rodrigo at Leeds being a midfielder. So we are looking at 2 players here that are classified in different positions. So it is worth noting that, and it is going to be dependent on the strategy that you want to go for, whether you are adopting a 3-5-2 formation or maybe a 3-4-3 formation going forward. Now, as I mentioned in regards to Leeds, they are the other team that are potentially doubling in game week 22, and they are away against Nottingham Forest and away against Man United. Now, when we are comparing the underlying stats here for both players, it's worth noting that in regards to Gnonto, he has only really come into the team from game week 17 onwards. So we're looking at a very much more smaller sample size when we are considering Gnonto in comparison to Rodrigo. So take that with a pinch of salt. But of course, the information here that we are looking at is per 90 minutes. Now, expected goals, Gnonto's actually been pretty impressive at 0.28 per 90, but Rodrigo has been ever present and really consistent with his chances that he's had in the team at 0.44 expected goals. But the big factor that we have seen with Gnonto is very much a goal scorer, not necessarily a chance creator at 0.03 XA per 90 compared to Rodrigo's 0.1. Big chances, both decent at 0.42 for Gnonto and 0.69 for Rodrigo. But what I really do like for Rodrigo is he continues to rack up the shots in the box per 90, 2.76. We're not looking at somebody who's taking speculative shots from 30 yards out. He's still getting himself into fantastic positions in the box, and we can see that at high XG numbers per 90. Now, naturally, with the numbers that we're looking at, the expected FPL points per 90 is going to be in Rodrigo's favour, and the next 4 predicted points is going to be in Rodrigo's favour at 19.2. But as I mentioned previously, I really do think it comes down to what sort of strategy you're trying to adopt. I really think at 5 million, Gnonto offers you the opportunity to be really flexible in your formation. So, for example, you could have a team of Harry Kane and Haaland up front with Gnonto as your third forward. Deploy him as a forward in game week 22 in a formation like a 3-4-3. Then when we get into the long-term fixtures, you can happily bench Gnonto at 5 million and just decide that he's going to be your first sub and he can come into your team in certain game weeks where you do require him. Rodrigo, on the other hand, at 6.4 million, I really think needs to be an ever-present in your starting 11. And I do question going forward long term for both of these players whether their minutes are going to get slightly shared with the return of Bamford and the return of Sinistera. I do think both of these could have their expected minutes reduced as the game weeks progress. So when I'm kind of looking at the two assets here, I look at Rodrigo and think to myself, there are so many players at this price point that I want to own. Arsenal midfielder is an absolute priority, and knowing that I could get Odegaard at 6.8 and maybe Martinelli at 6.8 as well, alongside Rashford at a similar price, I start to question, can I squeeze Rodrigo into my midfield when the midfield positions are so competitive this season? Whereas with Gnonto, I think he offers the perfect balance of a player that, if he was to fall out of the Leeds team, isn't too expensive, that you can happily put on your first sub week in, week out. Yes, at 4.5 million, you could save yourself a bit of cash, maybe going for Ferguson at Brighton, but I think he just offers that perfect balance of value, high ceiling, but also the luxury of just deploying him on your bench and investing the funds further into the midfield on the assets that I mentioned from Arsenal, Man United, even a Mahrez at Man City. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. I'm favouring Gnonto over Rodrigo. And again, hold off your transfers just in case Leeds' double doesn't get announced. Same as what I discussed in regards to Man United. So next up, guys, I'm going to reveal a wildcard draft which kind of deploys the striker argument that I had in Gnonto's favour. So here, guys, on the screen, you can see a wildcard draft that is kind of catered towards a long-term 3-5-2 formation. Now, I'm slightly contradicting myself here, as on screen you can see I've actually put out a 3-4-3 formation, but this is very much team-specific on the double game week that we may have in 22. You can see sat on my first bench is Matoma, who is at home to Bournemouth. And although that is a fantastic fixture, with the double for Gnonto, it feels like you have to play him. So that is why, for this particular occasion, I've decided to opt for Gnonto in the team over Matoma. Now, naturally, going forward, this team is designed to basically accommodate a 3-5-2 formation, and with money in the bank dependent on your team value. Ederson in between the sticks, I still think is a fantastic investment if you want guaranteed game time in the Man City options. And again, if you are building a wildcard draft now, we need to remember that Man City do have a double game week in 23 at home against Aston Villa and against Arsenal. So although the attractive people like Man United for the double in 22 is going to be on the cards, we need to remember the guaranteed double game week in 23. And I think if you're worried about investing in the Man City defenders, Ederson is an easy way into that team with Ward as your backup goalkeeper, who really isn't going to be used that often at all. Shaw, Trippier, Ben White still offering fantastic value at their prices, but a word of warning in regards to the likes of Newcastle and potential Man United assets, and also Brighton. Game week 25 may potentially prove to be a blank. So players like Mings, although it might be a surprise, we know that Aston Villa have guaranteed fixture in the blank 25. So players like that at 4.2 million who offer guaranteed game time in that blank fixture, long term are going to pay dividends going forward. And that's why they're quite shrewd picks in the team. The midfield, you just can't look past these players right now. Odegaard, the best value Arsenal midfielder, I believe. But alongside Saka, he is looking unbelievable right now. And against an Everton team, he could do damage against anybody that he is featuring against. And the Man United double up of Rashford and Fernandes. This team has money in the bank, and I think a lot of you will have it. And that is to decide what direction to go for with the Man City midfielder. I think a triple up of Man City is still essential for your teams. And it has enough cash in the bank for you to maybe do Fernandes up to Kevin De Bruyne. But equally, if you think Mahrez is the route to go for, you can then downgrade Bruno Fernandes to Mahrez, free yourself up 2 million in the bank, and then going forward, you could look to maybe upgrade one of the defenders if we get rotation later down the line, or even look to upgrade someone like Matoma to a pricier midfielder and really invest that further into the midfield, which is looking like the place to go for. But with Haaland and Kane in the side, I really don't think we need to consider any other forwards right now. Both are offering amazing value, and Harry Kane is carrying Spurs right now in that season. And with some doubles to be arranged for Spurs going forward, I think Kane's just a long-term hold, even with a tricky home fixture against Man City. And with Gnonto, as I mentioned, I really do think that he is a fantastic value pick and one that I could happily bench week in, week out once the fixtures get difficult for Leeds. So That is going to be what I'm going to class draft number 2, mainly because it is what I think managers want to go for, but naturally with the forward options available and another forward that I'm going to mention now, might avoid because of this Arsenal forward. And this is my draft 1, and the main reason being is because this is the one that I'm probably moving towards if I was to go for a wildcard this game week. Now, slight changes is worth mentioning. The back three stay the same. I still think Ben White is the best investment in the Arsenal defence, and Trippier the best investment in the Newcastle defence. And it's worth mentioning, I didn't mention it in the previous draft video, I didn't go for double Newcastle defence mainly because of the anticipated blank game week 25. You might put yourself in a sticky situation if you have to navigate that with 2 Newcastle defenders that are going to blank. I still think Kepa is a good long-term hold for your teams. But the big changes here, Mahrez straight into the team, but importantly, Nketiah in that front line alongside Haaland and Kane. Nketiah's underlying numbers have been absolutely fantastic, and any doubts about him not being the first team sheet has been proven wrong. There was rumours that maybe Saka will get deployed as a number 9, Smith Rowe when he returns, but Nketiah has proven that he's more than a suitable candidate to replace Gabriel Jesus. And it sounds like Gabriel Jesus is still going to be out for at least a month, and that's plenty of game time to get true value out of Nketiah. And whereas Gnonto, we are going to be basically playing him as a first sub most weeks. With this team here, I think it has a perfect balance going forward. It gives you Nketiah, which for that double game week 23 is fantastic, so I think his game time is absolutely secure. It gives you the midfield 4, but importantly, what I do like about this is it gives you flexibility going forward. So for example, if you were in a position where Nketiah started to dry up with the goal department and underlying stats, you could then come down from Nketiah into someone like Gnonto to free up some funds, or even go sideways to someone like Mitrovic, who we know is Mr. Consistent in that Fulham team. Then with that downgrade to Gnonto, for example, we could then upgrade some of the areas in our team to a premium option like Fernandes up into a Salah if they were to get an announced game week 26 double game week. But with these drafts, guys, I wanted to give you a bit of a flexibility option in which direction you could go in. I really want to know in the comments, who is your favourite draft? Draft number 1 here, or the previous draft that I showed you, which is catered towards more of a 3-5-2 formation. I'm probably favouring the one on screen right now here, just because I think Nketiah offers amazing value in that forward line. And then I could adopt the draft to go to the 3-5-2 later down the line. But let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. And that is going to wrap up today's Wildcard Edition video. I really hope it provided some value. And if it did, it'd be fantastic if you could drop a like on the video. And if you are new around here, make sure you do hit the subscribe button. So guys, we will see you in the next video. Take care and we'll see you soon. Cheers.